Hello, welcome to presentation number 8, and this one is looking at the topic Brown and Levinson's theory of politeness. This is one of the longest topics in this course, and therefore the presentation is divided into two parts. Part A will look at politeness in general and look at the basic tenets of Brown and Levinson's theory of politeness. Politeness is looked at as the expression of the speaker's intention to mitigate face threats carried by certain face-threatening acts towards another. This is a definition by Mills, 2003. What is face, and what is meant by face threats? Well, face is the public self-image that each and every adult human being attempts to protect. Other scholars have defined politeness as a battery of social skills whose goal is to ensure everyone feels affirmed in a social interaction. In this second definition, key to note is that politeness is looked at as a skill. That means one may have it while others may not. So, a battery of social skills whose goal is to ensure everyone feels affirmed in a social interaction. Being polite, therefore, consists of attempting to save the face of another. Being polite, therefore, consists of attempting to save the public self-image that each and every other person seeks to protect. Now let's turn to Brown and Levinson's theory of politeness. This is the theory that accounts for the redressing of the offenses to face posed by face-threatening acts to addressees. So we realize that there are certain acts that we are going to do that are going to threaten the face of our friends. And so the theory is trying to account for the redressing of the offenses to face that may be posed by such face-threatening acts. This theory of politeness was first formulated in 1978 by Penelope Brown and Stephen Levinson, and that is why the theory is called Brown and Levinson's theory of politeness. Now, Brown and Levinson talks about face in two ways. They look at what they call positive face and then negative face, where face is the public self-image that every adult tries to protect. In their 1987 book, Brown and Levinson defined positive face in two ways. The want of every member that his or her wants be desirable to at least some others, or alternatively, you can look at positive face as the consistent self-image or personality, crucially including the desire that the self-image be appreciated and approved of, claimed by interactants. Negative face, on the other hand, was defined as the want of every competent adult member that his actions be unimpeded by others, or the basic claim to territories, personal preserves, rights to non-destruction, that is, the freedom of action and freedom from imposition. That is how Brown and Levinson defined positive and negative face, respectively. Thus, the positive face implies that somebody has the desire to be liked. Each and every adult has the desire to be liked, admired, ratified, and related to positively, such that one would be threatening somebody's positive face simply by ignoring that particular person, because in ignoring it means you are threatening their desire to be liked by others, to be appreciated by others. Negative face implies the desire not to be imposed upon, such that negative face could be impinged upon by simply imposing on someone, because according to Brown and Levinson, each and every competent adult has that desire not to be imposed upon. In other words, Positive face refers to one's self-esteem, while negative face refers to one's freedom to act. Do you agree that each and every person really has the face in terms of positive and negative face? The two aspects of face are the basic wants in any social interaction, and so during any social interaction, cooperation is needed amongst the participants to maintain each other's faces. Having talked about what face is, what positive face is, and what negative face is, let's now turn to face-threatening acts. According to Brown and Levinson, positive and negative face exist universally in human culture. In social interactions, face-threatening acts, or FTAs in short, are at times inevitable based on the terms of the conversation. A face-threatening act is an act that inherently damages the face of the addressee or the speaker by acting in opposition to the wants and desires of the other person. Most of these acts are verbal. However, they can also be conveyed in the characteristics of speech, such as tone, inflection, etc., or in non-verbal forms of communication, such as body movement and gestures. At minimum, there must be at least one of the face-threatening acts associated with an utterance. It is, however, possible to have multiple acts working within a single utterance. What then are negative face-threatening acts? The critical assumption at this point is that you understand what a face-threatening act is. Negative face is threatened when an individual does not avoid or intend to avoid the obstruction of their interlocutor's freedom of action. It can cause damage to either the speaker or the hearer and makes one of the interlocutors submit their will to the other. Freedom of choice and action are impeded when negative face is threatened. Remember, the negative face is the desire by every competent adult not to be imposed upon. Now, let us look at some of the examples of negative face-threatening acts that are going to cause damage to the hearer. One example is an act that affirms or denies future act of the hearer, as it creates pressure on the hearer to either perform or not to perform the act. Examples of such acts are orders, requests, suggestions, advice, reminders, threats, or warnings. All these are denying a future act of the hearer, and they are creating pressure on the hearer to either perform or not to perform the act. Secondly, an act that expresses the speaker's sentiments of the hearer or the hearer's belongings. That again is going to cause damage to the hearer's negative face. Examples are compliments, expressions of envy or admiration, or expressions of strong negative emotion towards the hearer. It could be hatred, anger, or even lust. All these may cause damage to the hearer's negative face. Thirdly, an act that expresses some positive future act of the speaker toward the hearer. In doing so, pressure has been put on the hearer to accept or reject the act and possibly incur in debt. A very good example is an offer or a promise. This one builds pressure on the hearer to accept or reject the act and possibly incur in debt. So, having looked at such instances that are going to cause damage to the hearer, let us look at instances that are going to cause damage to the speaker's negative face. One example is an act that shows the speaker is succumbing to the power of the hearer. For example, expressing thanks, accepting a thank you or apology, excuses, acceptance of offers. Here, the speaker commits himself to something he or she does not want to. Having looked at negative face threatening acts, let's now turn to positive face threatening acts. Positive face is threatened when the speaker or hearer does not care about their interactor's feelings, wants, or does not want what the other wants. Positive face threatening acts can also cause damage to either the speaker or the hearer, or both of them. When an individual is forced to be separated from others so that their well-being is treated less importantly, that threatens their positive face. Let us look at instances of positive face threats that exist. We'll start with such instances of positive face threats that are going to cause damage to the hearer. The first is an act that expresses speaker's negative assessment of the hearer's positive face or an element of his or her positive face. The speaker can display this approval in two ways. The first approach is for the speaker to directly or indirectly indicate that he dislikes some aspect of the hearer's possessions, desires, or personal attributes. Remember that positive face is the desire that every adult has to be liked, to be appreciated. So, where the speaker directly or indirectly indicates that he dislikes some aspect of the hearer's possessions, desires, or personal attributes, this causes damage to the hearer. The second approach is for the speaker to express disapproval by stating or implying that the hearer is wrong, irrational, or misguided. Examples to this effect would include expressions of disapproval, such as insults, accusations, and complaints, contradictions, disagreements, or even challenges. Another instance of positive face threats that is going to cause damage to the hearer is an act that expresses the speaker's lack of concern towards the addressee's positive face. The addressee might be embarrassed or fear the speaker. Examples to this effect would include excessively emotional expressions. The third instance is where the speaker indicates that she or he does not have the same values or the same fears as the hearer. Examples would include show of disrespect, mention of topics which are inappropriate in general or in the context. The fourth instance is where the speaker indicates that he is willing to disregard the emotional well-being of the hearer. Examples to this effect would be cases where the speaker belittles the hearer or boasts to the hearer. Another instance is where the speaker increases the possibility that a face-threatening act will occur. This situation is created when a topic is brought up by the speaker that is a sensitive societal subject. For example, topics to do with religion, or race, or politics. This may make the hearer not to be as comfortable and as such causing damage to their positive face. Another instance is where the speaker indicates that she or he is indifferent to the positive face wants of the hearer. This is most often expressed in obvious non-cooperative behavior. For example, interruptions, where you keep on interrupting the hearer. That is going to threaten their positive face because it shows that you're being indifferent to the positive face wants of that particular hearer. Another instance is where the speaker misidentifies the hearer in an offensive or embarrassing way. This may occur either accidentally or intentionally. But the bottom line is, whether it is accidental or intentional, the fact will remain that it will have caused great damage to the positive face of the hearer. Generally, this refers to the misuse of address terms in relations to status, gender, or age. For example, addressing a young woman as Madam instead of Miss, or addressing somebody as doctor instead of Mr., or indeed addressing someone who is male as Mrs. so and so. All these, whether accidental or intentional, cause great damage to the positive face of the hearer. Now, having looked at instances of positive face traits to the hearer, let us look at instances where the speaker's positive face is threatened. Is it possible for the speaker to threaten his or her own positive face? Sure it is. An instance is where an act is done that shows that the speaker is in some sense wrong and unable to control himself or herself. Example, apologies. In this act, the speaker damages his own face by admitting that he or she regrets one of his or her previous acts. When you as a speaker apologizes, it means you are admitting that you regret, and that causes damage to yourself, to your own face. Or accepting a compliment. If somebody says, "Oh, you really look so good," what are you going to say? Thank you. When you say thank you, you have threatened your own face. Does it mean that you did not know that you are looking good? Does it mean that all this while you are not looking good, it's only this particular day when you are looking good? Well, the bottom line is acceptance of a compliment causes damage to the speaker's positive face. Inability to control one's physical self, inability to control one's emotional self, self-humiliation, confessions. All these are instances where the speaker's positive face is going to be threatened. This is where we end the first part of this presentation. In the second part of the presentation on Brown and Levinson's theory, we'll be looking at the politeness strategies that Brown and Levinson have put forward as ways of trying to mitigate face-threatening acts. Thank you.